जी का खालसा वाहिगुरू जी की फतेह। व्यूअर्स ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਦੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਵਰ ਸਿੱਖ ਵਰਡ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਨਵਾਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਇਆ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਲੇਡੀ ਸਿੰਘ ਐਂਡ ਮਾਈਸੈਲਫ ਅਮਰ ਮੇਕਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਹੋਸਟ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹਰ ਰੋਜ਼ ਐਵਰੀ ਮੰਡੇ 7:30 ਵਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 8 ਵਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ ਔਰ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੈ This is your own program और जिस तरह तुसीं सानूं फीडबैक दिंदे हो तुहाडे फीडबैक दे हिसाब नाल ही ਇਹ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਰਹੋਗੇ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਚਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਰਹਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਪੰਜੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੱਸੋਗੇ ਸਾਡੇ
ਅੱਜ we are very lucky we're going to talk about human rights as we know it's very very important for Sikhs our gurus gave their lives Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, Guru Gobind Singh, Mata Gujari, and their young children, they all sacrificed their lives upholding the right of other people to have the way they want to worship. So this very important program, we got our guest, who's Jas Uppal. She is a solicitor, but she's in academics and working as a barrister. And she does most of her time, give most of her time to look to the human rights of others. She does spend most time. She is a Deputy Director for Network of Sikh Organizations. As you know, we've got 7 different departments, and one of the department is human rights. And she also has her own, she's a founder of Justice Upheld. And she's very experienced and been working day and night for people who are in jails in India, in Pakistan. And let's hear Waiguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
welcome Jas Ji.
And you're welcome to the program. And please tell us, why did you start this Justice Upheld?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here. Just to clarify, I trained as a solicitor, currently work in academia, and I'm transferring to become a barrister. I started working in human rights by accident. I was working in a police force in north of England, and at the time I came across the case of Subhag Singh in an Indian national who was on death row in Pakistan. I was
ਇਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੀ ਪਿਕਚਰ ਆਈ ਸੀਗੀ ਸਰਬਜੀਤ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਚ ਐਸ਼ਵਰਿਆ ਰਾਏ ਨੇ ਸਰਬਜੀਤ ਦੀ ਭੈਣ ਦਾ ਰੋਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਬਾਲੀਵੁੱਡ ਫਿਲਮ we saw that amazing it was very very sad and that's where we saw your role there in the film they showed and then we read about you and then we were very very impressed I was looking forward to be meeting you ਉਹ ਪਿਕਚਰ ਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੇਖੋ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੀ ਭੈਣ ਦੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਮਦਦ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ and you are nearly going to achieve for his release but ਅੰਦਰੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ internally prisoners ਨੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਮਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ that's very very sad but I saw the hard work you put into they shown a lot and your name that's how we came to
I'm grateful to hear that. I was unaware that reference had been made to my minor contribution. I only became aware of the case when it was highlighted on a BBC report, a news report on the internet. I was very moved by the case. I read what they had written and I thought, well, this doesn't sound correct. So what I did was I contacted Mrs. Dalwir Kaur Subhag's sister to find out more. It took me a long time to contact her, about 3 months. There was a visiting Indian MP who I contacted and he said it was no problem and he managed to put me in touch. So that's how it started. Quite naively, I thought, well, they must have a defence team, lawyers, a team of lawyers to help him. But when I heard the sister, I was absolutely moved by their plight. For 18 years at that time, she was the sole campaigner. I've got absolute admiration for her. She managed to get the the high and mighty involved, politicians, the media people, and she was quite media savvy in her approach, and she managed to keep him alive for 18 years. So when I asked her what legal support you have, she said none, except at that time recently a lawyer in Pakistan, an advocate, had said that he would like to help and he was trying to do what he could. So I got in touch with him to find out what he was doing, and I suggested certain things, and I made approaches to various international human rights organisations and various politicians in this country who were very sympathetic, but nobody really managed to provide the support that we needed to make it an issue here. It was a very well-known case in India, but not outside India, and therein was the problem. It needed airing in the Western world as well. So we got as far as the United Nations. Unfortunately, at that time, Pakistan was going through an election. I say unfortunately because that case was a political hot potato. And sadly, and amazingly, in a very secure prison, high security prison, he was murdered. And allegations are that they haven't been founded, but there are allegations that it was politically motivated. The Pakistani government did say that they were going to hold an inquiry, and they invited me over to Pakistan to present or make submissions in person at the inquiry. I did not attend for obvious security reasons, although they said security would be guaranteed. But nevertheless, I made submissions in writing. It is now, Sarabjit Singh died in the last week of April 2013, but the inquiry has still not been listed. It hasn't been scheduled. I doubt it if it will ever take place.
So just to tell me one thing, you know, he was there 18 years in prison. When did you actually got involved?
The 18th year, it was in 2009.
But you done quite a lot.
I did. I raised the profile of the case, and unfortunately, although I had some people who were interested, the problem was they couldn't understand what the British connection was. That's what official media in this country said. But human rights, it's not the preserve of the Western people, it's international. And, you know, so they should have played a much greater part.
Recently you came to see Lord Singh.
I did.
With some people. Tell us what's that about?
Well, as a result of the Sarabjit Singh case, and this is what resulted in me setting up Justice Upheld, a lot of people have been contacting me. There's various cases, but the case you mentioned is a very important case. In 1971, there was yet another war between India and Pakistan. Unfortunately, some Indian prisoners of war were captured, as were Pakistani prisoners of war captured by India. India maintains that they returned all the Pakistani prisoners of war after the war ended. But in India's case, there were a number of prisoners of war. They officially say there's 54, but I've got reason to believe that there were, and evidence to believe that there were a lot more who never came back and may still be in prison in Pakistan. So I have direct contact with most of the families of the Indian prisoners of war in India, and I've been working with them. And the most humble people ever.
Since 1971, they're still in prisons?
Well, there's reason to believe that some of them will be. Obviously, some may have died of natural causes or of their injuries, but there are some, and I genuinely believe that, and I will explain why. Then the two sisters of the two prisoners of war are British citizens. One is Mrs. Rajwant Kaur, who's the sister of Flight Lieutenant Gurdev Singh Rai. The other one is Mrs. Anita Kumar, who's the sister of Captain Kamal Bakshi. They were both captured. Nobody knows what happened to them, and they are officially listed on the missing Indian prisoners of war. So when I became aware of it, you might be startled to think, well, that was 1971, it was many years ago, you know, they may not have survived. But prisoners of war have special protection because they're prisoners of war. You have to look after them. You have to keep records of their injuries, their belongings, everything, and you have to report internationally and to the country from where they originate. That hasn't happened.
And the families have never heard about them?
The families have never found out. They have received information. For example, in Mrs. Rajwant's case, she was newly married and moved from India to England, and she recalls that she was watching the news with her new family, in-laws, and the BBC showed a report of the Indian prisoners of war captured, and she saw her brother as well as one of the captured prisoners of war, and she pointed out, there's my brother. And everyone around her said, oh, don't worry, I'm sure they'll be returned in the next week or two, etc. But that was in 1971. That was in December 4th and the 5th of 1971, and nothing has been happened. So we need to know, history needs to know what happened to them. Every year in India they refer to them, but nothing has ever been done. Now you're probably wondering, well, how they may not be alive. That is a possibility. Nevertheless, they were there. We want to know how they died. They were part of history. They were part of India's soldiers. They were part of India's history. We need to know so that they can have closure. These people, all the kin of the Indian prisoners of war, brothers, sisters, daughters, sons, they've been going around in circles for the last 45 years plus, not knowing what's happened. Parents have died, not knowing what happened to them.
No pressure from here?
From this country?
From this country, because there are some lords from Pakistan in the House of Lords. I know there are some MPs.
Yes.
Anybody has helped?
No, the only, obviously Lord Inderjit Singh has supported me, and I'm grateful for his advice, and he has met Mrs. Rajwant Kaur. As far as the British authorities are concerned, they believe it's a matter between India and Pakistan. They do not want to get involved. I'm not interested in the politics of it. I'm only interested in the humanitarian. These families have been going round in circles, and I think the two sisters are British citizens, so they should have you know, the support of the British government. I'm not asking them to make it a political issue. I'm asking them, or inviting them, to consider it on a humanitarian basis. And they've also got power to mediate between the two countries.
So just you're involved into it. So what's the solution? This is not fair. It's, you know, 45 years, must be some way.
Absolutely, there's pressure. Britain has a lot of say, trade with both India and Pakistan, and on a humanitarian basis. I mean, we've got the prevent strategy going on here. You know, it could be that is a try and resolve problems in this country, you know, about the rule of law, respecting the rule of law, British values. Well, it all comes into it. I mean, we need to export that outside and apply it outside. The other, I have to give credit where credit's due. The Right Honourable Mr. Hilary Benn, he did actually raise this matter in Parliament. I did contact him, and he actually raised it in Parliament. There's a question on Hansard about it, but the response has been from the current British government that's a matter between India and Pakistan, and I don't. I think that's not
true. When it's concerns their citizens,
absolutely.
If they were white citizens, they would have done something.
Well, I think there's a case of the gentleman who's released from Guantanamo Bay, Amar Sheikha. He got quite a bit of support. And you know, he's back. His wife is British, which is fine. I mean, I know these are sisters, but
so where were you failing? Where were you?
It's not a question of failing. I mean, I have raised it in the UN, and it's and I will take it as further as possible as I can, because I've met these families. I'm talking about the two sisters here, but I've met the families in India, and it's absolutely tragic. There's one lady called Mrs.
But you need what sort of support you need? You know, obviously you're doing a great job, but you know, the amazing. But what sort of help do you?
Well, we need media attention. I tried to get these ladies interviewed by Women's Hour on Radio 4, but they do not reply. And I think this is a human story. My Mrs. Rajwant Kaur, she's a wonderful lady. She cannot enjoy her life.
Okay.
Because she sadly, and I'll never forget this, she said that her children have got married, but she's always wished that her brother was there. Flight Lieutenant Gurdev Singh Rai. She's always thought about him, and when we do speak, she just tears. And I interestingly, this is a long story, but many years ago, she was being interviewed by Anita Anand on ZTV when she was a journalist there. And I remember seeing her, and she was crying and telling her story. I was very moved by it. I tried to contact her. I wrote a letter to, or emailed, I can't remember which, but to Anita Anand to say, what happened to this lady? Did she find her brother? Of course, nobody ever replied. But she contacted me, or rather her daughter did, via Facebook. And then I went to see her, and she told me, and I said, are you that lady? And she said, yes. And I said, well, I was trying to contact you, and this is how, you know, but she's a very resilient lady. Sadly, she had an accident, and so she's paraplegic and relies on a wheelchair. But she's a very strong fighting lady, Sikh lady, and as is Anita Kumar, who told me the story about her missing brother, Captain Kamal Bakshi, and she, you know, she's very emotional. She's got children. She's a grandmother, but she cannot forget. She recalls.
How can you do that?
Well, sadly, in both cases, in both ladies' cases, they said that their parents died. Crying, not knowing what happened to their sons. You know, it's extremely tragic. It would never happen in this country, in America, in the USA. Even now, they find dead bodies of British or American soldiers. They repatriate them with full honours.
That's right.
But why, we can't.
But why India is not taking it as a important issue?
Well, I have to say, credit once again where credit's due. This current government, the new government that's been in, they are taking it seriously. They do listen. Whereas the previous government didn't. I don't wish to be political or anything. I've got no allegiance or alliance with anyone. But they didn't. And in 1999, young officer, two officers of the Indian Army, they were on a reconnaissance near the Pakistani border. Unfortunately, they went into Pakistani territory and they were captured. And one of the soldiers' sisters is a teacher, and she's educated. She got in touch with the Indian government at the time and said, you know, my brother was captured. He was captured alive, and yes, we'll do something about it. So they then wrote to Pakistan, and I've seen the letter. I'm not impressed at all, but it was sort of more of a pleading letter rather than saying we demand the return. You know, after all, he was a soldier. So she then called them after a year, contacted them, said, well, have you heard anything? They said no. This went on for 5 years, and after the 5 years, they said they're going to close the file because they're going to presume him dead. How do they know?
Exactly.
Because you know, they should be raising this at international level. It's a human terror. It's got nothing to do with politics.
So even in Punjab, there are lots of Sikhs who've been in jails, and they've passed their time. But they're still not being released. Have you had any contacts with them?
I made representations in relation to Mr. Buller's case. Unfortunately, there's a lot of competition other people are working on those cases, and so they're not always they don't always share the information, and that unfortunately is our downfall. You know, everyone wants credit for it, but nobody's prepared to. Because I actually got in touch with his mother, but that's a different story, but they wouldn't provide me with the necessary information. So you can't go out and ask. You need cooperation, and so. But the thing is, at the moment, I've got loads of cases aside from the prisoners of war of Indian work migrants, men and women who go from Punjab to avoid the drugs, the lack of job or opportunities to work in the Arab Gulf states. Yes. And I cannot tell you how much they are abused, including women who end up, in domestic work, and they're abused physically, sexually by their so-called employers. I actually get direct contact with these people, and I get them repatriated to India.
That's a success story. Well, it's very, very difficult to get anybody.
I can assure you, Lady Singh, that there's quite a few cases where this has happened. But the tragedy is not. It is tragic that they are abused there, but the tragedy is also in India. There's recruitment agents who are not qualified, regulated, no laws are enforced against them, and they exploit these people by giving them the wrong visas, sending them on domestic workers visas.
Just you're doing such an amazing job.
Thank you.
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਦੇਖੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਖੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ 3 professions ਪੁਲਿਸ lawyers and doctors. They are doing God's job. और ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਦੁਨੀਆ 'ਚ ਕਿੱਥੇ God, everybody is working for money. ਪਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ amazing ਕਿ ਵਾਕਈ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਹੈ ਕਿ you are made to do good and ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰੱਬ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਪਰ funding ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ, how do you fund this?
Thank you very much for your kind words, Mrs. Mako. But the funding, I have a real problem. So far it's been done on personal money. I'm also a trustee of another charity called Bharat Welfare Trust, with indiaaid.com, and the gentleman who runs it, I refer to as my uncle, Mr. Kantilana Nadkut. He encouraged me to set this organisation up, and they've helped me a lot in establishing it. But the funding is a real problem because if their charity,
especially on international level,
I've had to go to India several times. I've been to the UN to present a case, which is the other case Lady Singh mentioned, which Lord Indrajit is supportive of, and that's of a young Indian engineer who from Mumbai. He went to Afghanistan for a job interview, or that's what he told his mum and dad, and he went for 2 weeks but he didn't return. He failed to return, and so his parents obviously got worried. His mum's is a Professor Fozia Ansari, and Mr. Nihal Ansari is a bank manager and no longer able to do his job because of what's happened to his son. And he went for a job interview, didn't return, and we had a reason to believe that he was in Pakistan. The reason we had reason to believe that was because Hamid, the son, was talking to somebody on Facebook, and he met a young lady he felt had some feelings for, who was in Pakistan, and she had sent him a message to say she's getting married to an older man and that she doesn't want to do that. So Hamid, who did a lot of charity work, he worked at the Rotary Club of India, the Mumbai branch. He went out to Afghanistan to go into Pakistan.
We heard so many heartfelt stories. Honestly, we're feeling so sad.
I'm sorry.
And you're doing a great job. What can, as you're running out of time, what would you like to say to our viewers?
I would like...
Amazing job you're doing.
Thank you so much. I would like people to get involved. We need media attention on these cases, and also for people to volunteer their services. I'm always looking around for volunteers to help me with this, because at the moment it is just me trying to run this, and something's going to give. So I need support. I think it's extremely interesting. Gurus.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll request our viewers, if they got time, especially if you've got the legal expertise, please do come. And I'm really heartened to find out that it's not only the Sikhs you look after, you look after all the communities, as the Guru's teaches, the respect for all.
That's what Sikhism is about.
Following the Guru's teachings. And thank you very much for coming.
Viewers, ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅੱਜ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਇਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਲਿਖਣਾ ਔਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਦੇਣਾ, ਤੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ,
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।